What do you think of when you hear Jack Black? Do you think family-friendly actor, musician, world-famous YouTuber?
Hey, what's up? It's me, Jack Black.
Most of you probably know him as one of these, but me? I know him as the guy whose movie traumatized me when I was younger. And no, I don't mean the one he was in where Iron Man did blackface.
Stupid ass Jack.
That would traumatize me as an adult. I'm talking about Goosebumps, the movie based off of a children's book series starring Jack Black as R.L. Stine. Now I know what you're thinking. Zoe, are you some kind of pussy? First of all, would I be dressed like this if I wasn't? And second of all, no. I promise you my tolerance for horror has gone way up since I was a child. Look at my favorite movies on Letterboxd. I promise you I'm different and cool and alternative and edgy. So to prove these horrific allegations wrong, today I'm gonna watch this movie from start to finish. My name is Zoe with an E, and this is Goosebumps. The film opens on a mother and her son Zach, played by Dylan Minnette, moving to the small town of Madison, Delaware. Within seconds of entering the door, they're bombarded by Zach's wacky-ass aunt, who gives him a wackier, assier hat.
Guys, it's me, Schlatt.
Schlatt goes outside to unpack when the box he was carrying breaks open and everything inside falls out. And by everything I mean a singular roller skate, a little red hat, a fossilized sponge-looking thing, and a smaller black box. So, you know, the essentials. As if this wasn't bad enough, he's jump scared by the girl next door, Hannah, played by Adair Rush. Honestly, growing up, I had some eggy emotions about Hannah. I wanted to be her so badly, and I didn't even realize it. They're only able to get in a couple of seconds of some of the most awkward flirting before they're interrupted by Hannah's dad, R.L. Stine, played by Jack Black. Am I the only one who finds Jack Black without the beard uncanny, by the way? Because this just looks so wrong to look at. Stine is a big grumpy grumps and basically tells Schlatt to fuck off back to New York and stay away from his daughter. Probably heard about what went down back in '99.
Joe, would you rather have unlimited bacon, but no more video games? Or would you rather have games and no unlimited games?
The next day, Schlatt heads to his new school with his mother on account of her being the new vice principal. And on account of her being the new vice principal, she gives a speech to all of the kids.
We are so excited for Friday's fall dance. We can't stop twerking about it.
One of these kids is Champ, played by Ryan Lee, who you just know is in like way too many subreddits. Like, he wears this shirt, waves to girls that don't know him, and he has a business card for himself that he gives to people.
Shoot me a text or tweet me. How do you do, fellow kids?
What kind of fedora flippin', wear my hug at, katana wielding bullshit is this? He's the comic relief of the film, the silly, misunderstood but good intentioned guy who we all point and laugh at but ultimately root for. And despite him having some pretty good beats and the odd funny line,
"She's locked in this house and her dad's a psychopath."
Does she have a friend?
he really grades on me throughout the movie. There are only so many times that you can do the haha, he's silly and wimpy, unlike big strong man thing, before it just gets really tired. After surviving his first day at school, Schlatt is taking out the trash when Hannah jump scares him again and invites him out into the middle of the woods. Look, I don't care how down bad you are, don't follow a stranger with a creepy ass dad and a tendency to jump scare you into the woods. That's how you lose organs. Turns out she isn't trying to disembowel him, but just show him an old abandoned theme park. They climb up to the top of a Ferris wheel, and this is honestly really sweet. They're obviously being set up for a romance and it's painfully obvious, but their chemistry makes it work really well, and this whole small town kids vibe is my absolute shit. Baroska, It, Cuckoo, Blair Witch, Scream, Texas Chainsaw. Anytime a piece of horror media follows this kind of vibe where it's contained to a small town, and either something in the town goes horribly wrong or some town secrets are revealed or there's a new kid in town that stumbles onto some weird shit, I am seated. I know it's simple, I know it's cliche, and I know that it's overdone, but it is good shit, okay? And this movie nails it. Later that night, Schlatt's in his room ranking TikToks when he overhears what seems to be Stine and Hannah having a domestic fucking hell. He goes over there, but Stine slams the door in his face, so he goes to his mother for help.
Hannah's in trouble.
Oh, who's Hannah?
Bitch, stop smiling! Now is not the time! Get your mind out of your pants! Schlatt calls the police, and they're about as useless as his mother. They do get maybe the funniest line in the film, though.
I didn't know being an audiophile was a crime.
A what a file?
Whoa!
Yep, that's a pedophile joke. In a kid's movie. Not even hidden or cleverly disguised. Jack Black's just a sex pest. So Stine tells the police that he was just watching a really loud horror movie and they buy it. because of course they fucking do. So Schlatt plans to break into Stein's house to save Hannah himself, and he calls Champ as backup, even though, like, realistically, what is he gonna do against an attacker? Downvote them? Champ shows up in a fully tailored suit because he was told that girls would be there. Okay, I actually kind of fucking love that. Schlatt picks the locks to the basement door and they sneak in, but there's no sign of Stein or Hannah, just a shit ton of Goosebumps books. However, these aren't just normal books, they all have locks on them. Champ is absolutely obsessed with this because, to be fair, why the fuck would you lock a book? So Schlatt, still down horrendously bad, finds the key and unlocks one so Champ will shut up and go back to looking for Hannah. But Hannah's already here, safe, and pissed off because they literally broke into her house.
Why is Hannah pissed off?
Because they broke into her house. When she sees the unlocked book, she immediately starts shitting bricks, and when Schlatt tries to put it back, he accidentally opens it, unleashing the abominable snowman. Right, so basically every single one of these Goosebumps books is magical, and they each contain a real-life version of a Goosebumps monster, and when you open the book, it unleashes that monster, like a backwards isekai. So because they opened the book about the abominable snowman was unleashed. I really like this as a premise for the movie. It's such a neat way to adapt a piece of source material, especially considering the original series was an anthology with each book containing its own unique story. So this way, instead of just adapting one of those stories or doing some kind of movie original thing, they can adapt literally every single Goosebumps creature while still doing something creative and new. And the visual of the ink pouring off the page and forming the creature as the story literally leaps off of the page is so cool looking. I just really enjoy this premise. It's such a cool way to contextualize the movie. So now everyone is shitting enough bricks to build an entire house with. But luckily the snowman hasn't noticed them yet, so they can all very sneakily... For fuck's sake. Champ almost gets bodied by this thing, but Schlatt saves him last minute, so it just bursts out the wall into the open instead. Look, all I'm saying is that one dead Champ is probably a smaller loss than a whole dead town. I'm sure his kittens would miss the free nitro, but they'll get over it. Hannah grabs the book the snowman just crawled out of and runs after it. Schlatt tries to follow her, but Champ slows him down, trying to just ditch the whole thing, which, like... Dude, you made this mess and now you're just gonna leave her to fix it? Schlatt basically drags Champ by the collar, following Hannah and the snowman to an ice skate rink where Hannah's tracking down the snowman, because the only way to stop it is to suck it back into the book. Luckily, Hannah doesn't have to wait for long because that motherfucker literally falls from the sky and it is not happy. It knocks the book out of her hands and we get an action sequence where they're all trying to grab a book, but also trying to not die. It's an okay action scene, and I like how they take advantage of the set piece. The whole time they're sliding about and using the rink shield to hide from a snowman and riding around on a Zamboni, but ultimately they're backed into a corner with no escape. The snowman is just about to deck their halls when all of a sudden he gets inky and sucked back into the book. This shot is really cool, by the way. Plot twist, Stein's here and he's also not happy. He orders everyone into the car, drives them home, and for like the 50th time tells Schlatt to fuck off, but he still just doesn't. Like, at this point, you have to take the loss. Instead, Schlatt and Champ follow Stein and Hannah inside and demand an explanation as to what just happened. Stein explains that when he was a kid, he was constantly bullied, and so he wrote stories to scare the kids that picked on him. But one day, the stories became real and actually started terrorizing people. So ever since, he's become a recluse and kept his stories hidden to protect everyone. Even though he still sold the stories and turned them into one of the most successful book series of all time, like, in this movie, he's still the famous author. He has sold these stories. But sure, recluse, got it. However, as he's explaining this all, he notices that another book was left open, and this might actually be the worst book that could have been opened. This book released Slappy the Living Dummy, aka the scariest thing to 8-year-old me. Like, I have to give them props, because Slappy is almost entirely practical and he's a really good villain for a kids movie, but holy shit, this thing gave me nightmares for years. I distinctly remember being too scared to open doors or peel back shower curtains because I was scared that Slappy would be on the other side of them. He was like my own personal boogeyman. But honestly, I'm not even salty about it because I genuinely think we need to introduce kids to horror more often. There are only a couple of other family-friendly horror movies out there. Honestly, the only one that comes to mind immediately is Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. But I think having more of these family-friendly horror flicks to show to kids is really important. As a kid, it was nice to have this film that gave me a little taste of horror without traumatizing me too much, and here I am 7 years later making my own horror short films and talking about the genre online. I don't know, I just think that kids deserve good chunks of horror here and there. Kids like to be scared just as much as adults. Why do you think Slender Man and FNAF got so big? One final note on Slappy is that he is also played by Jack Black. And I really like this choice. I know that Jack Black has been getting a lot of flack recently for only playing himself, and to be honest, I kinda get it.
I am Steve.
I mean, look at some of his most recent films: Minecraft, Borderlands, Dear Santa, Kung Fu Panda 4. This is all just Jack Black playing Jack Black. But I've always been of the opinion that when he's given a good script and pushed to do something really different, he is an incredible character actor. Lest we forget how hard he carried the voice cast of the Mario movie. Not to mention his work on the Jumanji movies, which I will stand by as being fucking brilliant.
Martha, come look at my penis!
And I think it's the same deal with this movie. Don't get me wrong, he's not delivering an Oscar-worthy performance, especially not as Stein, but he's actually like, acting. I think he does a serviceable job as Stein and a really good job as Slappy. Like, I wouldn't have even known that he played Slappy if it wasn't for the fact that I saw the IMDb credit. He does a really good job balancing being creepy and being funny. The whole performance reminded me a lot of some of the campier Chucky movies, and not just because he's a talking dummy. The whole time you could feel the amount of fun he was having playing the character.
I just want to read you a bedtime story.
Sir, shut your mouth!
Okay, guys, that's not gonna stop me.
And I honestly love that for him. It's so refreshing to see him play two very distinctly non-Jack Black roles. Anyway, back to the movie. When Slappy realizes that Stein didn't mean to let him out, he isn't having it. He takes his own book and burns it, meaning there's no way to put him back, and on top of that, he steals every other book. If there's a level beyond fucked, that's what the characters currently are. Slappy doesn't skip a beat. He spawns in the haunted car and goes for a joyride, unleashing monsters and burning their books. And he's not playing around either. He's taking down phone lines and dismantling the police. In like 5 minutes, this talking dummy has this town on its knees. Meanwhile, back at the house, everyone is grappling with the layers of shit they're now neck deep in. And when they try to leave the house, they realize they're locked in, and they're not alone. They're locked in the house with a bunch of evil, sentient lawn gnomes. I love this stupid movie. I also love the way these little fuckers move around. They do this thing where they snap into place, and every time these little shards fall off of them and their bodies get all cracked up, it's a really nice effect. These little menaces immediately start going gremlin mode on everyone. They even tie up Stein like he's a fucking giant. I love this stupid movie. But eventually they all get smashed, because of course they do. But then they start piecing themselves back together like little gnomey Deadpools. Because of course they do. Suddenly Schlatt remembers he picked the basement lock, meaning they can all escape through a basement door out into the open, where everyone else in town has been frozen and everything has been destroyed. Without a book to recapture all of these creatures, there is no way to fix this mess, so Schlatt suggests writing another book that involves all of the creatures. That way, they just have to open it once and all of the monsters would be toast. Although, wouldn't that just technically duplicate all of the monsters? The original books have been burnt. If you write a new magical book and open that book, it would just release the monsters from that book. This is a terrible idea. But in the movie, apparently this is a good idea, except it would have to be written on Stein's original typewriter because stakes, I guess. However, the typewriter is all the way across town in the high school, meaning they have to journey across the monster-infested town to get to it. If you think this sounds like a bad idea, trust me, it's worse than you think, because 5 minutes into this road trip from hell, Champ gets assaulted by the invisible boy and they run into... No, fuck off, no. Fuck off. Okay, I will admit, my horror-loving ass cannot do bugs. I can sit through hundreds of movies of people being brutally tortured and killed, but if I see a single spider in the corner of my room, I am having a panic attack. So this thing can fuck all the way off. Stein has the second sanest reaction next to just ending it all and starts driving off, but this motherfucker starts chasing after them with its bloody legs and oh my god, just kill it! Kill it now! They pull up outside of a supermarket and hide inside, which was probably a smart play considering all of that. But they're just about as safe in here as they are out there because they're trapped in here with a motherfucking werewolf. I love this movie's werewolf. He feels so vicious. Like, if this wasn't a kid's movie, I'd genuinely be afraid that someone's about to be torn to shreds. Everything about this design, the feet tearing through the shoes, the dumbass basketball shorts, the fucking mum tattoo, I love this. It feels like the perfect balance of man and wolf, which I feel like is hard to get right. Wolfman, eat your heart out. And in case it isn't obvious, this guy is entirely CGI, which I don't think takes away from it too much. Don't get me wrong, it's definitely noticeable, and I think they probably could have done more of it practically, but I have to give this movie props for how much it did do practically. Director Rob Letterman wanted to do as much of a film as he could practically, which we'll see pay off a little later. So while some of the creatures in this film are entirely CGI, like the werewolf or the praying mantis, most of them are practical, or at least mostly practical, like Slappy. Letterman is the same guy who directed Detective Pikachu, a movie I've spoken about before, and just like that movie, this film has some really interesting approaches to practical filmmaking. Most of it was filmed on actual sets and locations instead of being filmed entirely on a green screen. Don't get me wrong, there are scenes that were filmed on a green screen, because to act as though these things aren't useful or don't have their place is just plain dumb. But they were mostly only used where necessary, like to extend practical sets to save on time and money, or to get shots that wouldn't have been possible or wouldn't have been safe otherwise. And just like in Detective Pikachu, even though quite a lot of the creatures in this movie are CGI heavy, you hardly notice half the time, because the artists who put them together were actually able to focus on them, instead of spending 90% of their time CGIing fucking grass because the studio wanted to pump out some slop as quickly as possible. However, that being said, I do think this movie could have had a better balance of what it chose to do digitally and what it chose to do practically. I will praise this movie to no end for having really good CGI, especially for a kids movie, but there are scenes like this or this where the seams of the film really begin to show. I just feel like they did do a commendable amount of the film practically, but there's still an extra 10 or 20% of stuff that they could have gone the extra mile on, you know? Editing Zoe here, I just wanted to really quickly say like how much, like looking back on this and having rewatched the film in editing, I do want to point out that this really is like a nitpick. Like when I say this isn't a big issue and when I say it's like 10 to 20%, I really mean it, because the other 80% of the time the film looks really good, like really good. So I just really want to like put the nail in the coffin of this being a nitpick. So yeah, back to the video. Just like the praying mantis, they managed to escape, but just like the praying mantis, they're still not safe because this beefcake breaks through the locked metal door to reach them. I love this werewolf, even the way that he corners them is drenched in sauce. But unfortunately, he gets ran over by Schlatt's weird aunt before he can get his hands on anybody. He was robbed, okay? He earned at least one bite of champ at the very least. Schlatt tells his aunt to head to the police station to tell them about what's going on. But like, they were useless when you had a very reasonable everyday issue earlier. What do you think they're gonna do against a giant praying mantis, a werewolf, and an evil dummy? Meanwhile, Team Stein is gonna keep on heading to the high school. Through the gay yard? The gay yard? Meanwhile, Team Stein is gonna keep on heading to the high school through the graveyard. This can only end well. Whilst in the graveyard, Hannah gets snagged on a statue, and while she's snagged, she starts glowing in the moonlight. Turns out she's one of Stein's creations, not a real person, which is all kinds of traumatic. But before Schlatt can confront Stein, a bunch of zombies start crawling out of the ground, which is why you don't take a shortcut through a graveyard in the middle of a monster apocalypse. If a supermarket wasn't safe, why would a graveyard be any better? On the bright side, Stein didn't write about 28 days later zombies, which means they can outrun them and make it to the school. Meanwhile, Schlatt's kooky aunt just made it to the police station, where she finds Slappy dressed up as a police officer.
You have the right to remain silent.
I love this fucking diva. So now Slappy knows where Stein is and that he has a plan to put him back in a book, meaning that Team Stein has about 5 minutes before the entirety of Halloween Town is knocking on their door. But now that they have a minute to talk, Schlatt confronts Stein, and Stein tells him that even though Hannah isn't technically real, she feels real to him. And look, I really like the idea of this twist. I like that it plays into the film's themes of escapism and how it can be good or bad. Like, Stein used his monsters as an escape as a kid, but it went too far when those monsters started attacking other people. It's a good theme. But then they throw in this whole arc about Hannah not being real and Stein not being able to let go of her even though it's kind of morally fucked up. And then they tie it into Schlatt's dead dad and how he struggled to let go of him, and I don't dislike the idea of this. I think it's a pretty interesting concept and a good ethical dilemma to explore. Except the movie doesn't really explore it. They have like 1 or 2 scenes where the characters talk about how fucked up it is and how it's kind of bad to manufacture a whole fake person, but then they just kind of brush it under the rug. Like for the whole rest of the movie, they're like, yeah, she's not real and it's fine and we're not gonna tell her about it. And it's like, hold up. You should probably let her know that she's a fucking fictional character. I don't know, it just feels kind of half-assed. And I get that not every movie needs a whole, ooh, look at me, I'm pretentious and deep emotional drama. But don't just kind of do it. If you just kind of do it, it comes across as cheap. Anyway, now that he has his typewriter, Stein can get to work on the book whilst everyone else goes and warns the rest of the school, because as it turns out, they're in the middle of a school dance. But when they try to warn everyone, no one believes them. That is until one kid gets fucking murdered by a giant praying mantis.
No, seriously!
And with that, everyone starts fortifying the school, ready for Slappy and his monsters. They're gonna have to work overtime though, because Slappy still has a couple of books and... oh yeah, no, they're fucked. For the record, a good chunk of these monsters were done practically, and that is really impressive. I mean, look at this swamp man. That's a real swamp man. Despite everyone's efforts, these guys are still getting in and they're taking no prisoners. Case in point, this girl is about to get torn to shreds by the werewolf when all of a sudden Champ comes out of nowhere and starts wrestling it. Not only that, but because of his silver fillings, he's able to chomp into it and scare it off, saving the girl. Jesus, I was unaware of his game.
I have a ton of cavities. When I was 10, I didn't brush my teeth for a whole year.
Never mind. With the monsters storming the school, everyone, Stein included, is forced into this one cramped room, and Stein still hasn't finished writing the book. They need to buy him more time, and so Schlatt has an idea, rigging a school bus to explode to distract all the monsters. This gives Team Stein the time they need to escape. They hide out in the fairground from the beginning of the movie so Stein can finish writing, but even this still isn't enough because Slappy still finds them. I'm beginning to get a little concerned that this talking puppet might be omnipresent. He begins monologuing to Stein about how much he hates him, and then he opens one last book. The Big Book of Terrible CGI. Oh my god, that looks awful. In all fairness, this is the worst that the movie ever looks, but it is hard to ignore that this looks like a Spy Kids movie, or even worse, a Marvel movie. Stein stays behind, sacrificing himself to the blob so Schlatt, Champ, and Hannah can finish writing the book. And this works. They finish writing the book and all they have to do is... I fucking told you so. Now they're stuck in a Ferris wheel rolling down a hill and I'm sorry, they're dead. They're so dead. They actually get rolled away far enough from the creatures to open the book, except Schlatt doesn't want to. He realizes that by writing a book that will capture all of the monsters, that means it will also capture Hannah. But this is when Hannah reveals that she knew the whole time. Turns out she's been 16 her entire life, and after so many 16th birthdays, you begin to get a little suspicious. So, since Schlatt refuses to open the book, she opens it herself, sucking in all of the monsters and causing a skybeam. Sure, why not? So every monster and creature, including Hannah, gets sucked back into the book, forcing Schlatt and Stein to move on. And Champ's there too, I guess. A few weeks later, everything in town is about as normal as it's gonna be after everything that happened. All the damage is being repaired, the school is back open, and Stein even has a job there as an English teacher. They even have a cute little cameo from the actual R.L. Stein.
Hello, Mr. Stein.
Hello, Mr. Black.
That's fucking adorable. Stein and Schlatt have a little heart-to-heart about them both letting go, and this would have been a really sweet note to end on. After lying to Hannah her whole life, her final act was finally taking her own existence into her own hands, and by extension giving Stein and Schlatt the closure they needed. It's a pretty decent somber ending for a storyline that could have been given more time to breathe. But then, they fucking ruin it.
And also right over there.
So Stein just brought her back? Cool. I feel like this was the nail in the coffin for this whole subplot. I already have my gripes with it, but by just bringing her back, you really undermine her entire sacrifice and what little moral dilemma you had built. Like, this already felt half-assed, and then you throw this cherry on top? I know it's a kids movie and blah blah blah, but Inside Out killed Bing Bong, Bambi's mum died, and the opening of Up is one of the most soul-crushing 5 minutes of cinema. So it's a kids movie is not a good excuse. And again, not every movie has to do some big emotional bullshit, but you can't just kind of do it. Don't give me the burger without the bread. So Hannah and Schlatt walk off into the sunset, and that was Goosebumps. Overall, I can see why little me was obsessed with this film, and I can understand how it would be scary for someone who still believes in the Tooth Fairy. It's a really well put together film with some solid practical filmmaking, good CGI, and a bunch of little things I didn't even get to mention. Like, the lighting and grading of this film are just really nice sometimes. I also really like this film's score, courtesy of Danny Elfman, who is behind some of the most iconic themes you definitely know. I know for a lot of people that original Goosebumps theme holds a special place in their heart, and I can't blame them. But for me personally, this theme will always be what pops into my head when I think of Goosebumps. The movie also has a really good flow to it. Like, for a kids movie, it's a surprisingly slow burn. We don't get any big action sequence until about 30 minutes in, and the plot doesn't really kick off until about 40 minutes in. But you don't really notice it. This film has a really good flow to it. Everything just bleeds together really well, and since every action sequence takes place in a different place with a different monster, no one set piece feels the same. And as far as my gripes with this movie goes, most of them are more so nitpicks. I feel like it's a tad too reliant on CGI at times, and there are a couple of characters and plot lines in there that just don't work or could have used some work. And I have to say that while for the most part the comedy of this movie was surprisingly decent, there were a few times where it felt kind of formulaic or MCU-y.
Maybe they're friendly. Not friendly. Definitely not friendly.
It wasn't ever enough to really pull me out of the film or make me cringe, but it was a little stale at times. But all in all, I was pleasantly surprised on my revisit of this film. It holds up as good, entertaining fun, and a really good first exposure to horror for a younger audience. I can definitely see myself flicking this on with younger family members around Halloween time. And if you have the time, I'd say check it out. It's currently on Netflix. But with that said, thanks for watching. And I want to take the time to thank you for 1,000 subscribers. Like, that doesn't feel real. And the camera just cut. Motherfucker. Ah, dude. We were actually... There's 2 lines left. Motherfucker. Okay. I'll pop it on charge for a little bit. We might as well keep the fucking Zoom rolling. Ah, that is so annoying. We'll just put it on charge for 10 minutes and then we should be done. Literally 2 lines left. Ah. I'll stop for a recording. No, we'll keep it going. Fuck it, why not? No, we'll stop it. We should stop it.